So I hate shell formers. I hate panel formers and shell formers. I think it's less egregious for panel formers to exist than shell formers. And the reason why is because shell formers seem rather lazy. But there is 1 to 2 exceptions that I keep in my toy collection. And that is Takara Tomy ARCEE. This is how it should have been released. If you're going to have a dynamic and awesome looking action figure packed into a shell, this is how you should do it. I do agree. But what I would have recommended is for Takara Tomy to put some kind of screw in the middle joint so that way you could remove the car entirely like I did and put on a false backpack like I did, so that way you could have the small backpack RC and have the car separate. Because legitimately, this is not a fucking transformer. It's a shell former, which means that a shell sits on this toy's back and makes it look fucking hideous. I'm going to go on record and say a lot of people didn't buy this thing because of the same thing I thought about it when I first saw it. There's 2 dynamics going on here with this RC. One of them is that the backpack is shit, but the other dynamic is the fucking action figure is amazing. So here's something to keep in mind. Hajime Sorayama, the man, the myth, the legend. This artist pretty much dictated a whole era. And Takara Tomy was trying to emulate this guy's work with this RC. I recognize what they were doing, and I fucking love it. His artwork is magnificent. It's glorious. I'm an artist, so when I see other artists working they're in their peak, I'm like, yeah, man, that guy's the best, you know? He's the best at what he does. Just like Geiger was the best at what he did. Michelangelo was the best at what he did. You gotta have your favorite artists out there, and Hajime is one of my favorites. He's fantastic at what he does. And in Takara, the executives there were like, hey, man, this is what we should make it look like. Look at that shit. And it's beautiful. Without the backpack, this is a fucking amazing toy. I had one of my subscribers ask me a question about this. He was just like, hey man, I saw your cartoon comparison of MP-RC and that's not the figure. I'm looking to find this figure. Has it been modified? And I said, yes, it has. So essentially this is what I did. I pushed the pin out of the back and I unscrewed the whole top torso so that way I could separate the car from this body. And it turns out that is not that much actually holding it on, so it should have been just a fucking option in the first place. Secondly, when I was putting RC back together, she had a naked back, and I was like, okay, what do I do with that? And I got one of the, Earthrise RC or something like that. And I cut the backpack off of that thing. I kept the mid joint where she had the same inherent issues because she's a little version of this thing, but not as articulated and not as good looking. Okay. So after taking that, I chopped it down again. And after I chopped it down again, I stuck it in, I drilled a hole out, put a pin in it, and that's the backpack. That's essentially all there is to making this figure amazing. Yes, it doesn't transform. Like, look, there's certain things I recommend they have to transform. I've transformed MP-44. I'm so used to it now. It's great. But when I first get it, I was intimidated as fuck. I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. But RC doesn't make that kind of sense. When you're going in for the RC, it just doesn't make the kind of sense that I think that those executives wanted it to make. It's a beautiful toy and it poses magnificently. She's got this is my second favorite Masterpiece fucking toy without the backpack on it. Let's be fair. It looks gorgeous. A lot of people, they don't really care for his looks. I do. I like it. I love the way the fucking thing looks. I like this way better than the Fans Toys Rouge, which looks like shit to me. And also, it's plagued with a bunch of bad quality issues. Like, that thing is floppy, and I've held it. It's not good. The MMC one looks pretty good. And and by the way, that's my opinion. Somebody else can have a different opinion of these toys and they can collect that shit, and that's good for them. I'm not shitting on them for collecting it. That's what they like. Your collection is your artwork. My collection is my artwork. What I've selected for my fucking collection is the things that I like, and I bought a lot of it. So saying that, putting aside, this RC, it poses better than almost better than any regular action figure. And that's what I said about MP-44 is why I liked it. And that's why the Magic Square was so good to me. It's because they pose so fucking well. You're asking a toy, you're asking a product to hold 2 modes and still have all the articulation. What you have to jam into this thing. Classified figures don't have that responsibility. You only have to look good and pose well. You don't have to transform. Transformers are on another fucking level of engineering because they've got more responsibilities. And this is why I glow about these fucking X-Trans bots and MP-51, because they're working in sound chips and working in electronics for lights in the eyes and opening chambers, opening fucking doors, and then making the fucking thing transform. And look, I'm an engineer. I've designed for years. That's a complicated fucking mess if you take the laundry list of things you're asking this to do. Unfortunately, those things don't apply to ARCEE because ARCEE is a very simple toy. She only has to pose extremely well and look good and transform. She doesn't have electronic add-ins. She doesn't have opening fucking doors and an opening fucking hood. She doesn't have any of those things. So I'm not marking her for not having those things. I'm saying, oh, I don't really need this backpack on this fucking toy because it doesn't add to the greatness of the toy at all. Matter of fact, it's better without it. So that's what I did. This is how it should have been released. Removable backpack with a secondary chest plate so that all the people that were mad about the chest plate can be happy. And I know the KO fixed that, but still they didn't put in a removable backpack option with a smaller backpack to plug into that shit. If you're going to do characters from the cartoon that are gonna, like with false parts, Bumblebee's got a false chest that's hidden away inside of him, and I love that toy because of that shit. I think that's ambitious as fuck for them to go ahead and make the shrinkage happen with a false part that's inside the body. Unfortunately, ARCEE, she suffers because there's no false backpack with this originally. I had to make it happen. So this is how it should have been released, and that is it.